Welcome back. Barraged by allegations of past violence and suggestions of academic dishonesty, Katy ISD Superintendent Lance Hint announced this week he would leave the district at year's end. Hint says he can no longer subject his family to what he called a, quote, ruthless smear campaign. In a closely related development, Katy ISD trustees have hired a law firm with tax dollars to wage a defamation suit against the superintendent's critics, an appropriation which some legal experts believe may be a violation of the law.
I love Katy, but there is a vicious ugliness in the ruthless attacks that I and others have endured.
We learned Friday that the defiant Katy Board of Trustees unanimously voted to give Hint $750,000 in separation pay, an amount equaling his salary for 2 full years. Who's got something to say about this? I'm going to start with Bill.
I'm going to tell you, and people wonder why taxpayers are upset, why they don't want to vote to repeal revenue caps. I mean, this is exactly the reason. I'll tell you what I would love to do. I would love to go back for the last 5 years and look at every Katy employee who's been fired and see if any one of them got 2 years severance pay. I'm guessing they probably didn't.
This was voluntary. He quit voluntarily. Nyanza, you're an attorney. You know, what do you think about using public funds to defend the district's reputation along with its superintendent?
I believe the same way that we had at the state capitol with, I don't remember his name, but he used the state money to pay off one of his people that he had a sexual whatever with it. I think that Katy is doing the wrong thing, and I also think that it sets a precedent for we reward bad behavior in Katy ISD. And if we're the trustees that have been serving with this guy the whole time, we're going to have his back no matter what. So we don't care that he's a bully. We don't care that he's allegedly plagiarized something. As a matter of fact, we're going to pay him $750,000. See, people don't understand. When you say $750,000, they don't really, some of the $750,000, that could pay off a few houses, that could pay off for a few teacher salaries. In the same way that they are rewarding his bad behavior. When you quit, you don't get a severance. You know what I'm saying? When you're laid off because the company couldn't afford you, you get a severance.
Salary, 15
yeah, but now that you're being rewarded for bad behavior, this is a situation where the city, the citizens of Katy, see, I don't live in Katy, thankfully. Because if this is the way that your school board is being run and this is the way that you're allowing your taxpayer dollars to be spent, rewarding a bad behavior, is he bullying those people that he served with into giving him this money? Has he threatened to sue them? Are you going to use taxpayer dollars to pay for all your legal defense? And maybe I need to say something to defame him so he can sue me.
Okay. Well, here's the other issue. Are they using the threat of a lawsuit to stamp down any type of criticism? I mean, you overtly criticize the school, and they can sue you, Bob.
So is this bordering on official oppression? I don't know the answer to that, but you know, to use Tony's term, the bad hombre of Katy is whining about assaults on his character that are vicious rumors or complaints or whatever it was that he said in there. It's certainly not as vicious as allegedly shoving a kid's face in a toilet.
Kidding.
Right. So what he's receiving right now is treatment for how he has treated people in the past.
Let me jump in. There's a very interesting law in Texas that most people don't know anything about. And by the way, Rick Perry was the champion of this, and it provides for very serious penalties if you file a defamation case that ends up being frivolous. And I'm going to tell you what, I think the Katy School Board is going to end up running into that law in Texas.
But back in March, I think we've forgotten that parents protested because Katy ISD did away with the bilingual education program. And the justification from the trustees and the superintendent was that it cost too much, $1 million.
Wow.
Guess what? That's just about as much as they're about to waste on this guy who's leaving. And again, I mean, let's forget about the guy now. Here is a school system that said they couldn't afford $1 million for an educational program, but they're almost there. We're paying someone for all the terrible reasons we just mentioned. They've got to rethink how they're doing things.
Word on the street.
Same thing?
They got a bunch of bad hombres.
Jessica hadn't spoken yet. Do you have any thoughts on this? Well,
first of all, Katy schools are some of the best, certainly in the region, and people move to Katy because of the schools there. So I want to be careful that this is truly a battle of personalities at this moment, and it doesn't filter down into the schools that are out there. So always has been a well-run ISD, if not very expensive ISD in the bonds that they put forward. Aside from all that, you know, I am very curious. Defamation is one of the highest thresholds, and certainly one of the very highest thresholds in politics. It's a very risky move for a school board, for an ISD to enter a defamation lawsuit. The relationship with this superintendent is curious at best. And I think that ISD with this defamation lawsuit is about to go into uncharted territories, and what Bill said may indeed prove true. The fact that the taxpayers are paying for it, what I don't understand, the first question I asked was, why isn't the superintendent paying for his own defamation lawsuit?
Good question. We got to move on. Okay, we got to move on to another topic. A 12-year-old with autism was arrested in Conroe this week after firing an imaginary rifle at his art teacher. Law enforcement officials say the educator felt threatened. The boy's mother says her son meant no harm and was deeply traumatized after being handcuffed and hauled away from school in a police car. Conroe ISD says David Sims had threatened the teacher before and must spend the remainder of the spring semester in a disciplinary alternative school. I'm going to Bob Price because he retweeted my story.
I'll retweet it next week.
Not just retweeted, I wrote about it on Breitbart, and it got front page attention. It deserved the national attention that you brought to this story, and it drew over 5,000 comments, 5,000 shares on Facebook, which extrapolates out to about 100,000 or so people actually seeing this story that you put out in addition to the local market here. So it illustrates the idiocy of these zero tolerance policies, and for some teacher to say that they feel threatened by a 12-year-old autistic student who points a finger at her. I mean, I can see it if it's a mob boss coming to me and say, you're going down. Okay, I feel threatened by that. I don't feel threatened by a 12-year-old kid. She needs to go to a snowflake room somewhere.
Absolutely. Okay, so I appreciate the spotlight that's being shined on this for what's going on with this white child. Now, there are states like Mississippi and Georgia and some places in Texas where they have police officers in the classrooms in kindergarten, and they have arrested little black boys and little black girls in kindergarten, first, second, and third grade, where their wrists were so small that the handcuffs couldn't keep on them. And the fact that now all of a sudden it's egregious because it's a white kid. This has been going on for kindergartners and first and second graders that are black kids across this country, and nobody cared. You know what I'm saying? This is a 12-year-old, not a kindergartner. What do you think it does for a kindergartner to be in the back of a police car, to be arrested? And when the light was shined on this in The 13th, which was a documentary that came out last year and that was nominated for an Academy Award, nobody cared. Not one congressman came up and said it's not okay to arrest a kindergartner. But now that this happened in Conroe to a white kid, it's all over the national news, and it's unfair.
I'll tell you, if I hear about that happening anywhere in my viewing area, to an African-American kid, Hispanic kid, I will cover it.
Thank you, Greg.
You know that.
I appreciate that.
This criminalization in the public school system is just absurd.
Right.
You know, I can't imagine how many times I would have been arrested going through public school for some of the stuff I did.
We all would have been arrested.
Based on this is crazy. It's absurd. Let these kids be kids.
I will say that they have had a lot of kids speaking out, acting out in the wake of Parkland out there. So there may have been some type of overreaction.
Well,
last comment.
Sure. Remember, too, that our president's solution to all these issues was to arm the teachers. So imagine in this case.
That kid would have been dead.
Imagine in this case,
over a finger.
If that teacher felt threatened enough to call the police, how would they have reacted in this case?
We can talk
about it. And the child is autistic.
All right, still ahead. You're going to hear from our panel again as they answer the question we all look forward to. What did we miss? So stay with us.